Okay, Chairman, we are now live streaming on YouTube. I hand the meeting over to you.
Good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual Cabinet meeting on the 18th of June 2020. My name is Councillor Paul Arnott and I am the chairman of tonight's meeting. I'd also like to welcome anyone watching this meeting via live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, this meeting is being recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout. And may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As the meeting is dependent on the internet connection and a power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to connect. But after 15 minutes, if we're not able to, we'll have to consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for details. Please make sure all microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels or feedback. Please, if you can, keep your points short and try not to repeat points that have already been made. And of course, please don't interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait to be called. Suhal will be looking out for those, as will I. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting, and any member of the public who wants to view it can do so by visiting our website, eastdevon.gov.uk. So we'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you're present, please mute your microphone again.
Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Ragg.
Present.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Hayward.
Present.
Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Ledger.
Present.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Rickson.
Present.
And Councillor Rowland.
Present.
Thank you. That's a full committee. Chairman, you are quorate.
Thank you, Amanda. So I can confirm we are quorate today. Before we go to item 1, public speaking, I hope it's going to be helpful in these still very unusual circumstances to set the scene for this extraordinary meeting, which is, after all, really all about item 7, the urgent enhanced provision of public lavatory facilities. There's been a little confusion and a soupçon of mischief making around this. So tonight is all about how one district council is obliged to react to national events. And to make this clear, I'll very briefly set the scene. A few weeks ago, you will remember the government altered lockdown rules so that people could make return day trips from their homes. Predictably, this resulted in huge numbers coming to our lovely coastal towns. Then, just this last Monday, rules were relaxed further so that non-essential retail shops could reopen in other towns too, a welcome boost to our economy, but of course a cause of safety concern at the same time. Southwest leaders wrote to the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, nearly a month ago, appealing for him to honour the Chancellor's pledge to do whatever it takes. Our councils have received no reply as yet. But despite this council believes it must respond to the change in circumstances. Our coastal towns and major shopping areas must have safe, COVID-19 compliant lavatories restored as a matter of extreme urgency. The problem is that this will cost somewhere between a lot of money and a hell of a lot of money, as Andrew Hancock's excellent report shows. So for that reason, we did not feel that this was a decision that should be left to delegated officer powers, and we felt it must be brought as a matter of urgency to Cabinet at which of course all members can speak, and that together we could make a reasoned decision which met one crisis but did not immediately precipitate another financial one. So I'm very grateful for all of those who have gathered here today in a spirit of national and local collaboration. So with that, we go to agenda item 1, public speaking. Amanda.
Okay, the first public speaker then, please, is Mr. Ian Barlow.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for letting me speak. Obviously, I am chairman of Sidmouth Town Council, and we are concerned, as Councillor Arnott has said, that our town centre is now open. We have been overrun earlier when we had visitors from mainly local visitors, but everyone poured to the coast when we had the fine weather. Luckily, lately, we haven't had fine weather, so the toilets haven't been under as much pressure. However, now the town is open, we have no toilets in the town, and that is just not acceptable. Sidmouth Town Council pay East Devon District Council over £40,000 a year to run toilets on our behalf. Now, I think we're one of the few towns that does that, and I just feel that we're not getting our fair share of that. We put in more than we take out of the pot. East Devon District Council benefits, or East Devon as a whole benefits hugely by Sidmouth being visited by many visitors from outside. And this year we are hoping for a larger proportion with the stay-at-home visitors. And we feel that if we don't have the facilities open, we are not looking our best and we will suffer in the future. So I'm a businessman and I look at everything as what is your asset? Sidmouth is an asset to East Devon District Council because we put more in the pot than we take out. And we need to have assistance in that. To do that, we need to have our toilets open. The main one we're talking about is obviously the marketplace. I know you've opened 2 of them late, but we got them open eventually. At the moment, you'll talk about public health hazard and having to clean the toilets more often. At the moment, people are relieving themselves outside the toilets, in our streets, in our beach, etc. And that surely must be more of a health hazard than not cleaning the toilets 5 times a day. If they're only cleaned once a day, it's surely, common sense would say, it's got to be safer than people relieving themselves outside. So I would just beg you, please, however much trouble you're in and however much we blame the government for this, get the toilets open now. This should have been done 4 weeks ago when Sidmouth asked for all our toilets to be open, and deal with the problem of money as it runs out in a few months' time. We don't need the toilets open in November and December. We need them open now, not in another 3 months.
Speaker.
I've only got a few seconds left, so I will leave it there. I'm not very good at public speaking. I'm much better at answering questions and having time to do this. So I apologise for that. It's the first time I've ever had to do this, but I feel so strongly about this that really we need to get on with this, not procrastinate and worry about blaming it on government and other people. This is something that should be done now. Thank you.
Okay.
You're on mute, Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barlow. I hope if you've read this report and you've seen the various options and you hear the debate today, I think as it goes along, you'll see the intention is absolutely to get these things open urgently. The only comment I'd make is, nice as it might have been to have them open 4 weeks ago, there was no government guidance that allowed us to do that. But hopefully by the end of this evening, I think you may be satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you very much, but I would just say that there are no government guidelines now on public toilets. This is what has been made up by your officers, quite rightly, to try and best guess that. So again, they are probably a little bit over the top of what they need to be, in my opinion.
Chair, you have a speaker. Councillor Wragg would like to speak.
Okay, are we doing that before we come to the other public speaker?
I would say take the other public speaker and then allow it to go in for debate later on.
Thank you. I hope that's okay, Councillor. So can we have the next
Chairman, I had a question for Mr. Barlow.
Oh, okay. Please, Eileen, I apologise. Please go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Barlow, I know that some years ago, Sidmouth Town Council acquired one of the public toilets, and I recall Councillor Anne Liverton at the time, saying that, or shortly after, a couple of years later, she wished they never had. The town council had never acquired the toilets because they was such an expense to run. Can you confirm whether that toilet is still, I'm not sure which one it was even, whether it's still in the possession of a Sidmouth Town Council?
Yes, I can confirm that we took over one of the toilets on the seafront, and you're right, they are expensive to run. We've just actually built 4 new toilets there because we believe that it's important that if we're asking visitors to come here, we have toilets. So we are literally next week opening our new toilets as well on the seafront. And the reason they're expensive is because at the present time, we use East Devon District Council to clean them on our behalf. That's always been something historically that's gone on. And you're right. We as a town took that decision back, again, before all of your time, and I'm sure before my time, that we took it on to help East Devon District Council when they were having problems with finance back then, and problems again with toilets, because it's always an easy thing to cut, because I know it is a discretionary service that you provide. But it's an important service to the town. That it's the part of the overall package, isn't it? If we want people to come here, we've got to give them facilities.
Thank you. And it was during my time, Mr. Barlow.
I do apologise.
I'm just very young looking.
No, I can't see you, and I'm sure you are.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Barlow. A point of information, obviously Sidmouth isn't alone in this. I'm aware that just looking at a community like Broadclyst, it costs them £10,000 a year to run their own loo, and quite a number of other parish councils are taking these things on. Can we have the next speaker, please?
Yeah. Sorry, where's he gone? I can't find him.
Councillor Paddy, isn't it?
Paddy, yes.
Councillor Paddy, hello, Colin. Please go ahead.
Right, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Right, thank you. Right, I speak on behalf of Colleton Parish Council, whose views I represent. And on hearing of this hastily convened meeting and reading the supporting notes, I understand the urgency of having this debate in the light of the dire financial state of the District Council. The discussions and arguments which will be put forward this evening will bring no comfort to the people of Colleton as they search in vain and in desperation for an open toilet in the town. The understanding of the man and woman in the street, as far as I can see, that these manoeuvrings are the first sign of the toilets, perhaps in Dolphin Street in Colleton, remaining closed even after this pandemic has ended. And a quick straw poll among councillors and among the people of Colleton is that the Colleton toilet should be opened as soon as possible, even if it means voluntary help for extra cleaning. These toilets are a vital public facility for the parish of Colleton and help to support the town's businesses and the tourist attractions, and will show that life is on the road to recovery. And I'd like to remind the District Council that under the Public Health Act of 1936, all public council authorities are encouraged to provide public conveniences in as many centres of populations as possible. And I believe that this still holds good today. Here in East Devon, we have a growing elderly population who have an increasing need for public conveniences. The removal or reduction of public toilets is essentially a public health issue, with people forced to urinate or worse in gardens and hidden corners, as we've heard from the councillor from Sidmouth. And I know that this debate today is not about the closure of toilets, but the man in the street needs the reassurance from the district council that they will do everything in their power to open all the toilets as soon as possible and keep them open. And I believe there are 16 more toilets in East Devon which are still closed. Today is, believe it or not, is the 205th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo. And from comments we're getting in, it's certain that the people of Colleton will do everything in their power to ensure that the funds that they have paid as council tax to the council will be used to help keep this vital facility open. And there will be a vigorous campaign to impress this on the district council. And I hope perhaps I speak for all the places in the district where other toilets are still closed. That, Mr. Chairman, is my presentation on behalf of Colleton Parish Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pady. As you know, and some others may not, I am also a member of Colleton Parish Council, and if I look that way 200 metres, the loo are there. Colin, just to absolutely reassure you of something, and I know Andrew Hancock would reassure you as well, there has been no conversation at all whatsoever, hint, glimmer of an idea of not reopening the Colleton loos. There really hasn't. And I think there's a little bit of panic going on. We aren't in Colleton going to. We haven't had the same revival of tourist numbers yet that the coastal towns have, and that is why at this stage Colleton hasn't been a priority to bring in. But a point that's been made is one of the first tourist operations that may get going is the Seaton and Colleton tramway. So I took the precaution of looking at the Seaton Colleton tramway's risk assessment for COVID-19 this afternoon, in which it's identified that the loos at both ends, at Seaton and Colleton, will reopen COVID-19 compliant. So as far as the first stream, forgive the pun, of tourists coming back in, I think Colleton will be covered. But just to say that clear as a bell again, the Colleton loos are not shutting, and if there's a hint that they are, Colin, I will strap myself to the bowl next to you. Can we have the next speaker, please?
There isn't another public speaker, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, and thank you for both public speakers, much appreciated, and I hope you continue to listen to the rest of the meeting. We move on then to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of our previous meeting. Now, if anybody has a comment on those, please can you do so by raising your blue hand? But if no blue hands are raised, I'll take this as an indication that you all agree the minutes of the previous meeting. I can't see any blue hands raised. Amanda, Sue, can you see any blue hands at your end?
No blue hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case, the minutes of the previous meeting are therefore agreed. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 3 now. Apologies. Amanda.
I have no committee apologies, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now we have to go on to one of the new entertainments, which is part of these virtual meetings. We have to do a roll call to see if any of us have declarations of interest. So I'll hand over to either Henry or Amanda for that. Amanda, I think.
Yep. Okay, so I'll just go through the list, and if you could just give me your declarations if you have one. If you haven't, just say no. So Councillor Arnott.
No.
Councillor Wragg.
None.
Councillor Armstrong.
No.
Councillor Bailey.
No.
Councillor Hayward.
Yes, I'd like to make a declaration of personal interest. I work for a parish council in East Devon that has a public toilet facility, which it leases from the district council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Young.
No.
Councillor Ledger.
None.
Councillor Miller.
None.
Councillor Rickson.
None.
Councillor Rowland.
None.
That's everyone, Chairman.
Thank you, Amanda, very much. Agenda item 5 is matters of urgency. We do have a matter of urgency. It's the whole point of tonight's meeting, which will come at agenda item 7, reinstating street scene seasonal resource and additional budget to allow improved public toilet opening. Agenda item 6 is for confidential and exempt items, and there are no confidential or exempt items which officers have recommended should be dealt with in this way. So therefore we go straight on to agenda item 7, reinstating street scene seasonal resource and additional budget to allow improved public toilet opening. And I'd like to invite our officer, the service lead street scene, Andrew Hancock, to talk to us about this. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Leader. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. So the detail is in the report as presented, so I'm not going to go through it at length, but I will briefly outline for you the 2 sections that we're here to discuss this afternoon. So item 1, recommendation 1, refers to the first part of the report, is around noting the use or reinstating of our seasonal resource. So normally in the summer period, we bring in a number of agency seasonal staff to help us contend with the increased demand from the summer season. This year, as we were in lockdown, we had to look at areas that we could propose as potential savings to help meet the council's £5.3 million current deficit. As we were in lockdown at the time, the demand wasn't there, and we thought that we would be in lockdown for a longer period. Therefore, we thought it would be acceptable and possible to not spend this budget. It's now clear, as the leader has outlined, from the demand we've all seen over the previous weeks, that we do need this resource. Our demand currently is higher than in the highest summer months, and so to enable us to meet our statutory duties, we now need to reinstate these agency staff. We've already talked to agency staffing suppliers, and depending on your decision tonight, we'll be able to reinstate them fairly quickly next week, as we've another good period of weather approaching. So that's the first item. The slightly more troublesome and difficult item to debate is the reopening of more public toilet provision. So we know, as the leader has outlined, that we need to provide this important service and that it's linked directly to our economic recovery and our tourist industry. And with everyone not able to go on holiday abroad, we are seeing a higher amount of staycations and people day tripping visiting here. We know also from member inquiries, requests from town and parish councils and chambers that there is a desire and a need for this longer or improved opening, as some of the public speakers have outlined. So I just wanted to touch on one of the things one of the public speakers mentioned around us making up guidelines. We absolutely haven't done this. It is right to point out that there is no specific guidance that relates to public toilets on their own, but there is a whole myriad of guidance from the government on how businesses should reopen safely in order to be COVID-19 secure compliant. And that is the guidance that we have pulled upon with our risk assessment to recommend the increased cleaning frequency, which we're now delivering on the 10 toilets which are already open. This guidance talks about improving your hygiene standards, improving your cleaning frequency, but importantly undertaking a risk assessment so that you as the operator decide or set out what you think is reasonably practicable in meeting those standards. And that's what we have done. To give you an example, it talks about things like better signage for your customers, reminding people through signage about hand washing, increasing the frequency of cleaning of touch points, and also in one for shops around changing rooms, it did suggest that you should clean the changing room after every use. And one can imagine that a toilet cubicle is less hygienic than a changing room. So that gives you an example of why we've gone that way. There are also, we've looked at what others are doing. So just today I've been sent the London Parks, what they're doing, and their approach is very similar to ours in that they are increasing their cleaning frequencies to 4 times daily. They've got increased signage, hand sanitizers, and advisory signs. So just moving on, making sure I've covered everything. We pulled a composite of that guidance together. So we've looked at the guidance of reopening shops safely, factories safely, and outdoor facilities, and used the pertinent bits of information, all of that. The LGA and other councils have called on the government to issue specific guidance for reopening public toilets safely, but so far that hasn't been forthcoming. As and when that does arrive, we will review that and adjust our approach accordingly. But as I said, at the moment, the approach I set out in the report is what we believe is reasonably practicable in meeting our duty of care to keep residents and visitors safe. The recommendation for the enhanced cleaning resources to open more is based on this assessment and would make us COVID-19 secure compliant. In terms of the options set out in the report, I believe that option CI is the best option. That is to open to 14 sites with the enhanced cleaning, opening till 8 PM in the summer, which would give us 4 cleans a day with virucidal cleaners, and then ad hoc fogging and disinfectants used in the toilet blocks. And that is at a cost of £76,962 for the remaining 9 months until March 21. And this is the timescale that the government have set out in the COVID guidance that you should make amendments to. And it's also the sort of timeline that people have discussed in the media around a vaccine coming forwards. The cost comes from the additional FTEs that we need to employ, because we're essentially covering an additional half day on what we did before the pandemic, with the toilets being between 4 PM and 8 PM, needing that additional cleaning attention. We will, of course, adjust the cost if we find that less staffing is required. Option E is in the report also for your consideration, and this is to revert to opening all 27 toilets on the previous cleaning regime. We haven't gone into great detail on this because we don't believe it meets our duty of care and wouldn't allow us to be COVID compliant, but it's an option for consideration. I should have mentioned in the winter under option CI, the toilets would close at 5 PM to link with business opening hours, and that would meet some of what one of the public speakers mentioned. Briefly touching on what other local authorities are doing, I mentioned already the London Parks are very similar to us. Many authorities up and down the land are grappling with this, as you'd imagine. Some have no toilets open still, some have only just opened toilets. Exeter have 4 open currently with enhanced cleaning. North Devon have 7 of their 20 open with a 4 times daily cleaning regime, so similar to what we're proposing. West Devon are working to open more of those, and some of the others have theirs closed. In terms of the other recommendations, we have touched on how you could choose to fund this, so that there is the potential of environment of other budgets to cover this, or recommending to council for additional budget. And in recommendation 4, I have touched, and also in the report, on the need for a long-term review. This is to look at how we make our toilets more COVID-19 secure into the future in terms of building design. In the report, I briefly outlined a headline cost of £212,000 for the 14 sites to install sensor taps and sensor flushes so that people have to touch surfaces less. There would be an additional £6,000 to £12,000 per block for access control and auto lock, so that we could alter the locking time easily through the summer and winter without having to additionally staff that. But clearly there's a need to look at the costs and the sustainability of that going forwards across all 27 sites. So if we pro-rata that cost across the 27 sites and include the need to refurbish many of those sites because they're very outdated and some in poor repair, we'd be looking at a capital cost of £4 million, so a significant investment. And that's why I'm recommending under item 4 that we need to look at a long-term review of the provision to improve our investment in those facilities and make them more COVID secure. That's a brief outline of the report options, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, indeed. And I can just assure members and people watching that Andrew has put in the most remarkable innings in putting this together. We've already discussed this with him at length and for some hours, and really interrogated these options. So this has been taken very seriously indeed. But Andrew, thank you again. So do we have questions from members, please?
Yes, you have a number of members. Councillor Young, by Tom Wright and Andrew Moulding.
Okay, who was the first on the list, please, Sue?
Councillor Young.
Okay, Councillor Young, if you'd like to come in, please.
Thank you. Fortunately and unfortunately, it's my portfolio, so I'll come in first. This may seem a lot of effort to draw up a policy document and to call a cabinet meeting just to unlock a few loos. But this is the position we find ourselves having to penny pinch due to this COVID-19 emergency. It is simple to lock down, but it's very difficult to gradually unlock. At the start of the emergency, we locked all our public conveniences to comply to the strict government emergency measures. When the government relaxed the regulations for people to travel and to use our beaches, we reacted swiftly to open 10 of our public conveniences under strict government guidance and through risk assessments for a limited period of between 8 AM and 4 PM. That was Easter and things have moved on. We need to consider opening more toilets and over a longer period of time and to provide safe and healthy environment for shoppers now using our high streets again. Cafes and public houses, which normally provide these facilities as well as ourselves, are closed, and therefore the only provision for shoppers will be our public toilets. There are sadly no government funds for this considerable extra costs of heightened cleansing requirements, and therefore we must bear these costs ourselves. We are having to wear two hats: the environment health hat and again our finances hat. Health comes before money. Considering the substantial deficit due solely to this emergency, we need to be very frugal with our finances. We also need to review the need for street cleaning, especially at our coastal towns' seafronts, which have been exceptionally busy. More people, more takeaway food wrappings, more drink cans, bottles, and cartons, because there are no cafes and bars open, so it's all takeaway. We find ourselves in the middle of a perfect storm. Much more demand, much less funding, but we have a duty and an expectation from the public to provide a normal service. Therefore, we must provide the maximum service we can under these very restricted and challenging times. We cannot do it ourselves, so we're asking town councils for their help, to ask people to take their litter home, walk a little further to the loo, ask volunteers to pick up litter, to get the message across by the media and the press to explain what we're doing and why. The final recommendation is we need to review our long-term strategy of public toilets. This review is long overdue. They are becoming dated, not suitable for the new normal, and many in the wrong location. In any normal year, they cost us £750,000 simply to keep them operational. That's too much. Please approve recommendations 1, 3, and 4 and consider the choices for recommendation 2 and please choose wisely. I am really grateful to our great team of staff and officers for keeping our operations rolling at this most challenging of times. And on behalf of all our residents, I would like to thank them all. And thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I wouldn't normally say this, but if there's one person who's working possibly harder than even me at the moment, it is Jeff. He has got the most extraordinary amount on his portfolio. So thank you, Jeff, for all your work on that. I think next, Sue, is it Bruce Desarum next?
It is, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Desarum, please.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Apologies if I may have missed it from the report. I'm questioning page 11, para 1.8 under the street cleansing. It's a question when it talks about the empty bins. Is there a comparison with other local authorities? Because it goes on to say that our operatives are emptying bins at least 5 times a day. So I wonder about that. And secondly, following on from that, the health and safety aspects. How can this be mitigated? Because obviously, if staff do try this, then they'll obviously incur sickness problems. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on that. It's just for Andrew, really. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Desarum. Andrew, can you pick that one up, please?
Yes, certainly, Leader. In terms of the frequency and the demand, I don't have a comparison with other authorities in respect of number of times a day that they're emptying bins. But hopefully it'd be unsurprising to you that we are in communication with our colleagues in neighbouring authorities, and I can confirm that they are exceedingly busy also, and also struggling with the same sort of problems that we have. With respect to the health and safety issue on the heavy bins, in normal operation, our safe system of work is when they do a trial lift on a bin and it's too heavy, is to decant that litter out with a litter picker into another bag. What we're finding in practice, because they're so time pressured now, is that they're cutting corners. So what I'm highlighting there is that we have a health and safety risk if we don't do something here. With the additional staff that the reinstatement of the seasonals budget affords us, we will be able to have a proper frequency so that hopefully bins will be less heavy. But also in the long term, last year we moved away from the smart bins because they were costing us a large amount of money per month. Part of the business case for the smart bins was that they would tell us when they needed emptying, but we found in practice that they needed emptying so frequently there was no saving by that travel time, so it wasn't worth the cost. So we've moved back to large hooded bins, and we have on order some special lift vehicles as part of that project, so that the teams won't actually have to lift and manhandle those bins. So in the next few months, those bins will be on, those vehicles will be on fleet, and the problem will be negated.
Thank you, Andrew, very much. Bruce, is that okay as an answer for you?
Very encouraging. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay, Sue, who's next of member speakers, please?
Councillor Tom Wright.
Okay, Councillor Tom Wright, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to very much back up what Councillor Barlow said. It's very similar in Budleigh. I have a number of concerns, but first of all, what I am very anxious to do is praise how much certainly the street scene people in Budleigh have responded to this incredible increase in work. I know that in some areas it's getting them disheartened. So if I can just digress from the toilets bits, and I know how busy Jeff is because I wore that hat for some time, but I am concerned that on the safety to our operatives, the situation is, and I walk Budleigh Seafront at least 3 times a day walking a dog. People are cramming stuff into the bins, which results in that the contents of those bins being very difficult then to manhandle, and some idiots are putting barbecues in there with their sharp angles. And I'm just wondering if a simple solution might be, and I know we are very much against it, to provide more temporary bins throughout the season, because that will discourage people from cramming them into bins. If there's a bin that is available, they won't be cramming them in, and they will not be leaving carrier bags by our receptacles. We're very lucky in Budleigh in that our beach has very little litter left on it. People bring it back to the litter stations, but then the litter stations are not sufficient to cater for the amount of litter. That's that aspect of it. So I think we could do some more aid to ease the workload of our staff. And I know some of them who I speak to were getting disheartened with the situation they had. Now, with regard to toilets, I see that they're talking about cleaning at 8 o'clock. What I've noticed, and in fact it's not just COVID, it was happening last year as well. Our beaches are being used much later in the evening on moonlit nights. It's not unusual at 10 o'clock at night to see many people paddleboarding, kayaking, swimming, or just generally being on our beaches barbecuing. And I'm just wondering if 8 o'clock is possibly too soon, too early to lock our toilets. I know there's going to be cost implications in that, but people coming off the beach late in the evening, they might very well need to go to the loo, and at the time they need them, they're shut. That's all I want to say. But what I do want to stress again is how wonderfully well our street scene staff and Andrews people have been responding to the great increase in workloads. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. And I think your praise for street scene, I'm sure, will be welcomed by the staff, and it certainly is by us as a cabinet as well. We look very carefully at the 8 till 10 hours, as you can imagine, and the cost is huge, unfortunately. We're going to have to get the message out there. And I think Jeff said earlier, we're going to have to communicate how this works. If in the end we have to settle as an 8 o'clock closure, people on arrival at the beach are going to have to know that and, you know, make their plans accordingly, so to speak, or go into the sea perhaps. But anyway, right, thank you very much. Sue, who have we got next?
Councillor Andrew Moulding.
Lovely, thank you, Sue. Councillor Moulding, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My concerns are obviously on the two issues that I think most of us are thinking about. One, of course, is public health and the need for toilets to be open as much as they possibly can be and wherever they possibly can be. I'm one of those. I'm, if you like, an old man, and I have what is commonly known as old man's disease. In other words, I need to go to the loo very regularly, and therefore the need for public health, for toilets, public toilets to be open when I visit other towns and resorts is extremely important. And that's not just for me, that's for thousands and thousands of people in East Devon. The other concern, of course, is regarding support for our businesses so that they can survive in these difficult times. And therefore, in our area, tourism is absolutely vital. And we have to ensure that people will come to our towns and visit our resorts in order that we can boost our businesses in our local towns and resorts. Now, as I see it, all this costs a lot of money, and I don't think any of us doubt that. And that money has to be found from somewhere and at some time. And I notice in the report, there's a projection that we want to make improvements, considerable improvements to our toilet provision over time. So it is a question of, should it be over time, or should we start doing something now? And that's what I'm thinking about. I'm particularly looking at the report, and I'm looking at option D, which is, first of all, to reopen all our toilets. Now, I know it comes at a cost, and that cost has to be provided for. But for me, for instance, in a place like Seaton, I only live 4 miles from Seaton, but I wouldn't go to visit Seaton to walk along the seafront, because I know that if I go down as far as Seaton Hole, I should want to use a toilet, and that toilet won't be open. So I'm afraid I won't go to Seaton. I should go to Lyme Regis, and there I will find toilets open. And therefore, people will go to wherever they think they're going to get the best service. Now, in terms of service, I agree with everything that people have already said. Andrew Hancock and his team have my utter respect. They are doing a fantastic job under very difficult circumstances. But we as an authority have to look at this in the overall situation of public health, of tourism and business, and of how we can afford it and ensure that we can give the service to the people of East Devon that they expect. I would think that we ought to be looking now at option D, and in the longer term, as is mentioned to the report, of a more substantial provision of toilets in East Devon. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm worried about you now and your trips to Seaton, but you have for some time, and you will be in the future under any option, able to use the West Walk loo at Seaton. So as long as you can make it back from the Seaton Hole to West Walk, I think you'll be okay there. You can't make it that far, okay. Well, look, if you need to nip out of the meeting tonight, I quite understand. Just make your screen go blank. I think the other thing is option D. I'm guessing that every sensible member reading this document will realise that unless you, Andrew, can prepare yourself, get in your car and drive to Neil Parish's house to see if he can get £250,000 out of Mr. Jenrick or Mr. Sunak, we are not going to be able to afford that. I don't want to sort of, predict how the debate is going to go. It would be lovely to have £213,000 to do that right now and open everything from 8 till 8. Can't see where the money's coming from, but thank you very much. Next speaker, please, Sue.
Councillor Marcus Hartnell.
Oh, good, thank you. Councillor Hartnell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As a local authority, we should be doing everything that we can to support our local businesses, town centres and the tourist economy. It's not acceptable that visitors to our towns and beaches are left with no option but to relieve themselves outside of toilets and in other public spaces. I wholeheartedly agree with all the public speakers. We need toilets to be open now. There is a greater need now rather than in the winter months, as I think Councillor Barlow from Sidmouth suggested. It's potentially a higher risk to public health if facilities remain closed. As a shopkeeper in Seaton over the past couple of months, and I've remained open throughout the lockdown, I've had to wash and clean areas to the side of my shop on numerous occasions owing to the strong smell of urine. I'm concerned that this will just get worse. It's not enough to have just one set of toilets open in Seaton, particularly as it's only going to get busier from now on. At the very least, we need 2 of the 3 town centre facilities open. And I would request that the toilets at Turi Harcourt, just by the Tesco Plaza area, should be reopened as soon as practically possible, as they are close to 2 of our main car parks and the coach park. And at this present time, there are no alternative or easily accessible toilets in either Tesco's, Seaton Jurassic or the tramway. I fully understand that those facilities and attractions will begin to open, but I'm not sure they're going to want every Tom, Dick and Harry using their toilets in the middle of a pandemic. They're going to restrict them to their customer use only because of the cost of maintaining and cleaning them. So I think at the very, very least in Seaton, we do need to have another facility open as we approach what are going to be some very busy summer months. I fully accept the cost implications and the financial hurdles that lie ahead, but I think, we need to put public health ahead of that. And if we have to have conversation with town and parish councils, then so be it. But I think, the officers have done a grand job. Andrew's done a fantastic job in bringing this report forward. But I think, we need to look at some more financial options as to where we might be able to save money in other areas possibly, and have that conversation with town and parish councils as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus, very much. I think you understand, I'm sure you do, that the purpose of this meeting is to get these things opened as fast as possible and as many of them as we can afford. But of course, this will be reviewed as we go on through the summer. I'm thinking Thierry Harcourt to West Walk is 250, 300 metres. How far is it, do you think?
It's more than that, I would say. But the point remains, though, that you've got people coming off the east side of the beach, for example. So there may be people that have been fishing up towards the yacht club. There's no public toilets at the yacht club end of Seaton Seafront. So they may come off the beach from that side. They may walk through Beach Road onto Turi Harcourt to go back to their car, which could be parked in Tesco's. It could be parked in one of our car parks, which of course are now open. So having made it that far, if they're in a position where they're desperate to go to the loo, then they relieve themselves in an alley down the side of my shop or someone else's shop, rather than struggle along to West Walk and the toilets close at 4 o'clock there anyway. So, you know, I fully accept what you're saying. But sometimes if you've got to go, you've got to go, haven't you, at the end of the day? And that extra 200 meters, 500 meters, sometimes is that step too far, isn't it?
No, it is. Andrew, just coming back to Andrew Hancock, please. What can we do in terms of places like Seaton that may end up with one principal loo in the short term, in terms of making sure there are signs around, or public information, or Facebook posts, or whatever, so that people know where they need to go?
So I think the first thing to say is if there are very unsavoury incidents like the urination down the side alley, if Councillor Hartnell contacts us, we'll certainly send a team and clean that up. And I know that's just putting a sticking plaster on it, but that's how we can help in that respect. Recommendation 3 in the report is about extensive communications around whatever decision you make tonight, and the difficult times we find ourselves in budget-wise. This will be a compromise. We recognise that ideally we should have more and we should have them all open, but whilst we're trying to do the best by the guidance, we can't. We are currently updating an interactive map on our website to show which toilets will be open and when. We're going to be putting signage on the doors of all the toilets with those local maps on, and hopefully QR codes so people can quickly access and use their own mapping system to get to the next site. And we will also have an extensive media communications out of the back of this, and a social media campaign. So we'll cover it as best we can.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. Sue, who have we got next as a blue hand, please?
Councillor Megan Armstrong would like to speak, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong, please.
All right, thank you, Chair. I realise that it's a very difficult situation and we can't open everything that we would like to do, possibly, because of the financial implications and so on, and staffing. But I think we did have a discussion about the possibility of opening the Mayor toilets in Exmouth, particularly because it's right next to a barbecue area, so there is eating and drinking going on. It's very, very popular, often into the winter months there, but certainly very, very popular in the summer months. And also it's next to a play area. And I just wonder, I'm trying to remember what Andrew said about this when it was discussed before, and what the reasons may be. I realise it's an extra one, but there was a discussion about possibly opening that and closing a different one. And I just wondered if you could just remind us what the reasons were for not including the Mayor, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, so it was Fear Park was the alternative, or the one that's recommended in the report for Exmouth, because of the amount of use there, but also because of the cafe concession in Fear Park, which doesn't have toilet facilities. So as we discussed at Cabinet briefing, we could open the Mayor. It's only a seasonal toilet as it is anyway, in normal time, 6 months opening, but it is a popular toilet. But if we opened that and Fear Park, it will cost us additional resourcing because of the distance of travel. So we would have to look at what we did at Fear Park, and there's no easy answer there because the cafe will be trading and will need access. So it's a decision you'll need to make on whether you want to resource both, or whether we need to have a difficult negotiation with the cafe at Fear Park. I would just also mention at Exmouth, of course, that Foxholes is open, so it's not a million miles from the Mayor. Although I understand that if you're there barbecuing and eating and drinking, then it is quite a trip.
Yeah. Can I just, Chair? Can I just add to that? So it would be useful to know what the extra cost will be to have both of them open, and you may not be able to do that now. I understand that, but I just really would like to stress the Mayor that it is very, very popular, and with young children, and it's basically a park there, so it's exactly the same. It's a park with external takeaway food, exactly the same as Fair Park is in that sense. So, you know, anyway, I'll leave it at that. And my preference would be ideally to open them both if we could, but see what other people think. And thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Megan. That's noted. I think that will have to come forward in the next, when we have a next review of this, which I imagine is going to be in a matter of weeks, because it actually isn't on any of the options as outlined today. But I'm sure that can, well, apart from option D, of course, for £250 million. So next speaker, please, Sue.
Councillor Haywood, Chair.
I'm wondering, Sue, I'm just wondering whether what we ought to do is, because I see there are a number of people who are not members of Cabinet. So I'm wondering if we should, if it's okay with Councillor Haywood and Councillor Rowland, can we leave it till it comes back into Cabinet and go to Councillor Loudon and then Councillor Hall? Is that okay for everybody?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. So John Loudon, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, for transparency, I should declare I'm a member of.
Oh, John, you've gone
You
mute.
need to unmute your mic.
I'll start again. Thank you, Chair.
We never found out what you're a member of, but I can't wait to hear.
Like Councillor Barlow, I am also a member of the Sidmouth Town Council, so just for transparency. And frankly, like Councillor Barlow, I would love to see the Sidmouth toilets, all of them reopened and for the longest possible time. I understand that. But as he knows from discussions, I'm here tonight speaking as a member of the District Council, and therefore I have to come at this weighing up the desire that he has and other town councils have for maximum openness of the toilets with what we can provide. And in this regard, I also have to say that I very much agree with Councillor Moulding. I want to see all 27 toilets open. But I'm a bit surprised at Councillor Moulding. I'm not sure who's doing his financial calculations on this, because it seems to me that if we were to go with opening all of the toilets under option D, as we'd all love to see, we're going to have to find another £140,000, Councillor Moulding. And I don't know whether that sits very easily with your group's approach to the finances of this council. But we're in a difficult situation, aren't we? COVID's been a complete game changer, and 3 months ago we wouldn't have been having this discussion at all. Indeed, the idea of reviewing the toilets was something that we had put to the back burner at that point. But you know, a decade of cuts to public service, public expenditure for local government, and COVID has now thrown it all up in the air. And so I can recognise the difficulty that we're in, and I think the starting point has to be, as we've set out in option CI, frankly. I don't see we've got any other choice as of today. If things change as we go forward, if we get some decent government guidance, then we may have to and be able to review things in a better way. But I recognise the approach that officers have taken to public health and looking at the number of cleans we have to do on the toilets. And if you look around the country, if we were in Hackney, they clean them 7 times a day. So we haven't gone as far as some other places have gone. But all of this means we're going to have to spend a heck of a lot more money for a lot less opening of toilets. And I think we have no choice, Chair, but to run regretfully with option CI. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Can I bring in Councillor Ian Hall now, please? Ian, are you receiving over?
I am receiving. Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, please go on. Thank you.
Thank you. I will start again. Chairman and cabinet members, we are literally where we are. Nobody could have predicted this 6 to 12 months ago, what's going on. But I mean, I'm looking at this, that this is our best opportunity to support our high streets. And with that goes hand in hand our tourism. It's going to give our economy, local economy, the best opportunity to bounce back. And I'm sure all of you would agree that we need to give East Devon the best chance to recover. Now, putting aside at the moment the financial costs, what we need to ensure we're doing is when we look back, did we take the best steps? And I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but we do at the moment have 27 assets that could really give each of our local communities, the towns, coast or inland, every opportunity to bounce back. We've seen fantastic kickstarting of our local high streets this week with Totally Locally in Axminster, Seaton, name amongst others. And I do not want to be in a position that we regret of taking this with both hands so that we can look those residents and the businesses in the eyes and say, we've done the best we could in the circumstances, what none of us could predict it. So, Chairman, I would actually recommend that we go for option D. Thank you for your time.
That's fantastic, Councillor Hall. Thank you. And if I can ask you to take both those hands and shake the magic money tree, I'm sure we'd all like to do that. But with a bit of luck, there's another one. There's another option there which will actually allow the businesses to have that full support and the retail outlets in the towns and the coastal resorts as well. But if we win the lottery, let's go for option D. Thank you very much. I think, Sue, as far as I can see, we've got no more speakers who aren't. We do. Councillor Mike Howe, please.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's just a simple thing. I've just sat reading this report again, and I have to back up my colleagues in saying option D is probably the best one for our economy. What it strikes me though, and being as you seem to be all in the cabinet already predetermined on this, because you're pushing it very hard for a particular outcome, the one that's missing on this paper is DI. And that is quite simple. The opening hours proposed in CI, but applying to D. Now, that wouldn't cost the 213,000 or 284,000 for 12 months. It would cost less for obvious reasons, because we're only doing it for the summer, not the winter. It would give our economy, our tourist economy, our little businesses, the towns, everything the best option we can. And you are right, Mr. Leader, that there is a need for cash on this, exactly. But if our businesses don't survive over the next 6 months, we'll be in an even worse situation than we are now. So I implore you just to consider that option of DI. Do whatever you need now, because you need to work up the finances for it. But nevertheless, please look seriously at opening as many of these toilets as we can to get the tourists back when full opening opens for all our tourist attractions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, very much. And I don't think anybody would disagree with you. As soon as we can get to a DI scenario, that's good. But we need to get them open next week on a realistic financial scenario. As I've said a few times now, this is kept under permanent review. We may be back talking about this again in 3 weeks' time. Thank you very much. So as far as I can see, that is all the contributors we have who are not in the cabinet. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Andrew, again for that. Can I now come to members of the cabinet committee who wish to speak? And the first speaker I've got is Councillor Paul Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points to run through. to Councillor Barlow and Hartnell about the inappropriate urinating and other antisocial behaviour where facilities aren't available. Yes, it's unpleasant for everyone involved. You know, I myself know that this was an issue long before COVID-19, and it will be afterwards, as human beings do not all share the same level of public decency, respect for public facilities, and restraint. I personally can vouch for some of the foul and repellent scenes that cleaners of the Newton Poppleford toilet block, which is a toilet block run by the parish council, that they've had to contend with. And I'm sure our dedicated street scene team have experienced the same, if not far worse. That goes with the territory of public toilets. But the same applies to litter bins and dog bins. Most people respect their environment and their community and use them, but a sad minority do not. We could put a dog bin on every corner in East Devon at a cost of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds, but the nuisance would still be there because we're dealing with human beings. Members will be aware that hand sanitizer units on facilities which have already been reopened have been wrenched off the wall, vandalised, and the contents stolen. That is a continuing cost. And to cover the point that Councillor Barlow, the public speaker, raised, no council, parish, town, district, county or otherwise, can or will spend money willy-nilly without reviewing, scrutinising, assessing the cost beforehand, scrupulously. And they all have to make hard choices. Councils inland with very little tourism are probably not having quite the same conversation that we are. We are blessed with a beautiful tourist environment and blessed that tourists want to come and see us. But we have to be pragmatic whilst still promoting tourism and our local economy. Otherwise, Simon Davey, who's in this meeting, is going to be issuing a Section 114 notice on the 1st of July. But I'm sure Councillor Rowland, portfolio holder for finance, will elaborate on that front. We've already been told in other cabinet briefings that the reopening the high street funds, a very welcome, albeit limited fund, can't be used to support the enhanced cleaning and maintenance of public toilets. But what I do know is that this virus is still contagious. It's still virulent and highly dangerous to all. And it's an excruciating illness. My daughter is a nurse, and I have had first-hand accounts of the appalling suffering that people go through with this illness. And for some, a terrible, terrible demise. So that's the underlying public health issue, I'm afraid, keeping our residents, visitors, and economy safe and reassured that we're doing all we can, all we really can. And as the leader says, this is not a done deal. We can reassess, we can revisit. Cabinet is meeting almost on a weekly basis. And if we get reports from Andrew Hancock's team or ward members, we will reassess. That's the nature of leadership. You don't just stop, you continually evolve and improve, listen and adapt. But we have to take choices based on financial prudence today. Finally, all I would say, and I know other members have said, yes, but you can't blame central government. No, you can't. Central government didn't start COVID and they probably won't end it. But if every ward member here lobbies their MP, when this meeting finishes, that's 60 emails going to our constituency MPs asking them to go and see Mr. Sunak and ask for some more money. Go and see Mr. Jenrick. You know, perhaps instead of bailing out developers, he might put some money towards public toilets. That'll be a fine thing. But I think that'll be a very worthwhile use of a few minutes of all of our time to get the message to our elected MPs. We're doing what we can. We have financial constraints, but we ask you to. And finally, yes, I know that Sidmouth pays for their public toilets. Broadclyst pays for their public toilets. Newton Poppleford pays for their public toilets. So you'll see within the recommendations, there is a third, or the third recommendation is that we publicise what we're doing far and wide, but we also approach town councils and parish councils, some of whom have considerable financial reserves in their own bank accounts, and they may wish to contribute to this, which eases the pressure, which allows us to spend more elsewhere. They may actually say that public toilet that you haven't opened is so critically important to our town, we will open our bank account and make a contribution. Well, that's a conversation we look forward to having, because no one can solve this problem on their own. No parish, no town, no district, no county. We're all in this together, and therefore we solve problems together. And I'm afraid cherry picking which bits of the budget you want to promote and which bits you think we should spend money on doesn't work. This is a global issue that we're dealing with. And Simon and Jack are having daily conversations to balance the books. No one saw this coming. It's no one's fault, but we're doing what's responsible as a council to get us through it. So I think this is a fantastic piece of work by Andrew Hancock. Thank you so much for this, and your team, who's expended an immense amount of time in a very short period of time to present this. It's been tweaked, retweaked, and Cabinet is not predetermined. We'll have a discussion about it. There'll be a vote on it, as in all democratic administrations. That was the case before. It will be the case now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. I've got Councillor Jack Rowland to come in next. Jack.
Thank you, Chair. I was very interested to hear from what the public have had to say and the non-cabinet councillors. I just want to make a point to start off with. I'm extremely worried now about the male population in our area. I'm of a certain age where I fall into the same category as Councillors Moulding and Loudon. It's obviously a huge, bigger problem than I was even aware of. So, but leading on to the financial situation, if we go back to pre-COVID, there was already going to be a hole in our finances that needed to be filled. And originally there was going to be a saving of £62,000 on seasonal street scene services, which is now not going to be saved because it's going to be put forward to tackle this particular issue. In an ideal world, I totally agree that I would love to see all the toilets open to support businesses, our tourist information industry, and our other businesses. And unfortunately, we're not in an ideal situation, are we? We've got to face some realities. If we're looking at the costs involved, it's not just the costs either. It's the problem that for some of those older toilet blocks, you cannot keep the social distancing required. So with the other options, for example, where we're talking about increasing the number of sites from 10 to 14, those 14 sites are of a design where it's easier to keep the social distancing, as well as increasing the number of cleansing that's needed in this particular environment that we have at the moment. I didn't come to this meeting predetermined about anything. I had a very open mind, and I'm very grateful to Andrew, and I'm going to echo here what others have said, but the work that's actually gone into producing this report at short notice is much appreciated, and the work that the street scene staff are doing at the moment. But I think we've got to face some realities, because if we went for option D, where's that money going to be coming from at the moment? I'm going to be having some discussions with Simon, as he knows, tomorrow, where we're again looking at the finances. And we've already grappling with what the problems are about where other money is going to be potentially saved. And at the moment, unless somebody's got some gold bullion locked away that I'm not aware of, I can't see where we can save other money. I'm open to suggestions about that, but as I said, I've got an open mind about this, and I'm very grateful to hear the other comments that have been made, but we've got to face a few realities about what the budget constraints are at the moment to avoid what Councillor Hayward always mentioned about, and I know Simon would obviously not welcome this, about going down a certain route where we would be declaring bankrupts, and then what happens? the administration of this council will be taken over. Do we want to see that? I certainly don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack, and thanks for all the work you and Simon have been pursuing, so that hopefully before not too long we'll have a much clearer picture of our current finances. But that, of course, is germane at the moment, even as those as being fully identified, so that perhaps members of the public watching can understand it's an ever-evolving position. At one point, a few weeks ago, we had no car park income. That's now coming back in. On the other hand, we're having to spend a fortune in emptying even more bins. So it's all very multifactorial, this, at the moment. Can I bring in the next blue hand, please, which is Megan again, Councillor Megan Armstrong, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair, for letting me have a second bite of the cherry. Just to follow on what I was saying before, and it may have been mentioned in the report, but I hadn't seen it. I just wanted to check with Andrew that, assuming that at the moment we can't open the mayor toilets and any others that we can't open in the district, will we have appropriate signage on those toilets to refer people to the nearest ones? I'm sure that's been discussed, but I may have just forgotten it. But it's just a reassurance for people, because we've got visitors and so on. I can see Jeff putting his hand up, so thank you.
Let's ask Andrew to come back in, please, just to confirm that.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, we've already got signage on the toilets as it stands with a list of the other toilet facilities, but we're going to improve that following this meeting and have a map on each toilet showing the nearest toilet.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks very much. Yeah, great.
Sorry, thank you very much. I'm just looking for, all of my blue hands have disappeared, but from memory, after Megan, no, the blue hands have gone. I think we had Marianne wanted to come in. I've got a feeling Paul Miller was next. So there we go. No, Eileen as well. So Marianne, please. Marianne Rickson.
Well, I think some very sensible arguments have been made, and I was particularly struck by the strong argument made by Councillor Hayward, which I think was very well expressed. And I think he's highlighted the problems that we face, but in terms of financial prudence. I endorse what he says, though, and I do think perhaps that option D doesn't seem to be affordable, and it hasn't actually been costed out either. So I think that's a little bit difficult for us to consider at this stage. I do think that communication is key to this, and although I know they've been talking about using online, not everybody uses mobile phones or online communications, and so I think you need to publicise it at the points of entry, bus shelters, when people get to perhaps the triangle, so people know, then they're aware straight away when they arrive that there is a limited capability. But I certainly hope that the vote will be taken to extend the opening with the additional 4 that have been suggested, because I think these are badly needed. I know in Sidmouth alone that we definitely need them there because of the opening of the shops, and it is going to be the most convenient, pardon the pun, for the local visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne, very much. It's just occurred to me that maybe when we come to making recommendations, we could look at an amendment along the lines of what Councillor Howe was suggesting, that we try and cost for whenever we come at this again, DI, so to speak. So I think what was wanted was an idea to know what would happen if we treated option D, but on the same basis of changing the winter opening hours. So we might be able to add that one in, and then that, at least we know that's in the pipeline for consideration. That's just an idea. Councillor Wragg, please. Eileen.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, we know that public toilets are not mandatory. We don't have to provide them. With the withdrawal of government funding to local authorities we're under more and more pressure to try to find funding, to try to find ways of providing what we provide without raising the precepts too much. And after all, we rely on tourism a great deal. Those tourists come down here, but it's local people who are paying the precept to keep the toilets open. I think with the COVID crisis, that has certainly exacerbated the situation, not helped by delays in the what I believe is mishandling by central government, delays in taking action at an early stage, but hopefully that will come out when hopefully there will be an inquiry. I believe that we're going to have to consider bringing back charging for toilets. I mean, if people can go in and pay, what, £3.50, £4 for a pint of beer, they should be able to afford 50p or so to go to the loo. And maybe even seek sponsorship from, say, holiday parks, which bring people in who go to visit the towns and use the public toilets. And short of fitting everyone with catheters, I don't see a solution unless we start charging.
Thank you, Eileen, for that valuable medical suggestion at the end there, which doesn't form part of any of the recommendations tonight. But let's bear that in mind, and I'll talk to my GP about that next time I see him. I might go in with Councillor Moulding, see what we can work out. Thank you very much for that. Andrew, can I bring Andrew Hancock back in at this stage? Because I know he wants to respond to something in the last few minutes. Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. It was just to respond to Councillor Rickson's point around option DI made by Councillor Howe, I think. Of course, I will need to go away and cost it and bring it back as a future option. And we're very keen to get some more toilets open. As you've outlined, we don't want to delay that. But just using a rough calculation based on the difference from option C to CI, and it won't be exactly the same because the logistics might not be the same. We'd be looking at a rough cost of 163,000 for DI. That comes with lots of caveats of inaccuracy until I've gone and done the figures. But I thought that would help your debate.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That's very valuable, very useful. Right, okay, so next, can we come to Councillor Jeff Young, please, and then Councillor Bailey, and then Councillor Miller. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on Paul Hayward's comments, we are in this all together. Town councils, volunteers, ourselves, and now we need to involve our MPs. So may I suggest that we write a letter explaining to our MPs that the predicament we find ourselves in and asking if they can consider helping us. The other issue is it's looking as if the 4th of July tourism is going to be reopened. How that is going to affect our toilets is difficult to know because we don't know if the pubs and cafes are going to be opening on the 4th of July as well. If they do, then that's going to put a different picture on the other toilets that are going to be used. So now I would suggest that now we go for the cheaper option at the moment. I wouldn't like to go for option DI at the moment, but we should be looking at another step forward on or around the 4th of July when we can expect to see hordes of more holidaymakers, and according to Andrew Hancock, he's predicting good weather as well. So it's going to be an interesting summer we're going to be having, and we have to plan accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, very much. Can I bring in Councillor Jess Bailey? Jess, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I personally think that on balance, option CI is the best option. I think it strikes the balance between opening up additional toilets and extending the hours in the summer and then bringing them back slightly in the winter. And I think we have to recognise our financial situation. And I think that DI, just based on what Andrew Hancock said, is substantially more expensive. And I'm not sure that that's something that we should be looking at this moment. And I would like to see us go ahead with CI, I think.
Thank you very much, Jess. What I'll do is I'll wait for everybody to have spoken, and then perhaps we'll try and come to somebody to propose recommendations. Councillor Paul Miller next, please. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I'd firstly like to confirm that I certainly wasn't predetermined at the start of this meeting, and I don't think Cabinet was predetermined. I think we've listened carefully to all the points that have been made from the members, and I do, for all the reasons Councillor Bailey has just explained, and others, support option C1, but I do also CI, sorry, but I also think that Councillor Howe has made a very serious suggestion as well, and if there is a way of incorporating a minor amendment which formally commits us to ensure that his idea is costed for a future meeting, I think that would be a very good idea. So yeah, I propose we accept, we go for option CI, because at present we don't have the any funding from government. They've said they don't want to, or that they're not able to provide any funding for the opening of public toilets, and yet of course they're so important. So Jeff Young's suggestion of writing to our MPs to lobby for some kind of fund, perhaps to some grants for us to be able to improve our public toilets, I think would be a good idea. I'm not sure whether we need an amendment for that, but I certainly think that would be a fantastic idea. Thanks very much.
Okay, so at the moment, potentially, just for Henry's benefit, we may have an additional recommendation that the Cabinet works together to write a letter to our members of Parliament to explain this predicament and to ask for their further help. And then we may have a request to ask Andrew just to cost out DI as well, so we formally know where that is as we go into the medium term. So the next speaker from Cabinet would be, we've got Jack Rowland and then Dan Ledger. Jack, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the point about writing to the MPs at the moment. What I actually prefer is, once we've established exactly what the current financial situation is across the board, apart from just toilets, I'd actually hope that we could arrange a Zoom meeting with the two MPs, because I'd much prefer to be able to have an iterative discussion with them rather than just writing a letter, to actually spell out in detail exactly what the financial situation is where East Devon are facing. And part of which would obviously be this particular subject. I'm of a mind, having heard everything, that I'm favouring option C1 at the moment, with the provision about the amendment to option D. And bearing in mind, and forgive the pun, this is a very fluid situation anyway. There's nothing to stop us reviewing this again in the very near future in view of a changing situation, which, as we all know, seems to be changing by the week at the moment anyway, in view of guidelines. Thank you.
So Jack, your recommendation there as far as the MPs are concerned is that, arising from this and other financial matters as we understand them soon, we request a Zoom meeting with our 3 MPs, actually, including Mel. Yeah.
I beg your pardon. I should have said 3, shouldn't I?
Okay, right. Thank you. So I'm clear on that. Thank you very much. Dan Ledger, please. Councillor Ledger.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to echo a lot what everyone else has said. I do think CI does give us the best mixture of options. And I'd just like to second Paul Miller's slight amendment there to actually fully scope out DI to see where we are. I know this is an evolving situation and we need to evolve with it. So I'll second that and keep it short and sweet.
Thank you, Dan, very much. So, Henry, as far as I can make out, we have, I think, a proposal from Councillor Miller that we see, which has a seconder. We have a proposal from Councillor Rowland that we make contact with our MPs as well. And at the moment, it looks as if the Cabinet is leaning towards option CI. So is there a way in which we can pass those recommendations as a 6, Henry?
So, Leader, I think as far as scoping out the DI solution, I don't think you need a recommendation for that, essentially. If you were looking to agree CI tonight, and move forward with that, then I think the portfolio holder, in consultation with Andrew and Simon, will be able to work that up. And if there was a decision to bring something back, then Cabinet can obviously take a further decision in that regard. I think the difficulty about trying to formulate a recommendation around it is you need to set financial parameters about what's going to be acceptable or not. So I think my advice would be you stick with agreeing CI if that's the view, with a further scoping exercise to be carried out, which can just be taken as read, if you like. On the issue of whether or not you want to write or have a Zoom meeting, Cabinet can decide and we can formulate around that. But I think you've effectively got 2 different solutions at the moment. I think you probably need to work out which one you want to do, and then we can formulate the wording around it. And then just the final comment at the moment is that as far as recommendation 2 goes, assuming you do pursue CI as the solution, you need to make a decision whether or not you want to recommend to council to spend that money because it's an additional budgetary spend, or whether or not you're happy to do it by way of virament from other budgets, which would essentially land this in a decision for the portfolio holder. And I think you would need some additional wording around that. So you need to debate what you want to do, and then we perhaps can come back and finalise the wording on that, and also in relation to whether you want to write to government or set up a Zoom or try and set up a Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you, Henry, very much. So if I can come back to Andrew, perhaps on this, or perhaps even Simon Davies for some advice. So on recommendation 2, it's a recommendation to council for the additional funding, or effectively environment, which is finding the money from with other existing budgets. Simon, would you be able to explain that to us a little bit more, please?
Yes, certainly. So under the Constitution, there's an ability for the relevant portfolio holder, in consultation with the finance portfolio holder, to buy up to £100,000. So basically what that means is approving the movement of budget. So you'll be taking from one area to pay for a different area. So we'd have to work with I suggest it's Councillor Jeff Young in terms of his area about where we can find that saving. If that's the case, then Cabinet can agree that tonight, and I can work with the portfolio holder to find that environment. So we'll be keeping within existing budgets, if you like. If the alternative is to say, no, we need a new budget, then that's a council decision because you're asking for additional resources. So I think the advantage, and I believe I can work with your portfolio holder to find the monies from an alternative source. The advantage is you can make that decision tonight, and Andrew then can crack on and get the toilets open that you've agreed to, as long as it comes to under 100,000 in terms of the Constitution allowed. The alternative, if you wish to have an increase in budget, then we'll have to call full council to make that decision. Is that clear?
That's very clear. Thank you very much for that, Simon. I'm sure Jeff understands that, and Jack, of course, as well. I'm guessing in the circumstances, really, we have to go the Violent route, don't we? Because we've got to get these things open. And we just haven't got time to wait for another full council. That's my view, but obviously I'd like to see what other, whether other members agree with that. Is there anybody like to just speak on that subject? Well, I've got Paul Hayward there and then Dan Ledger. Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Well, taking on board what other members of this council have so eloquently said throughout this debate, that time is of the essence. We've got to get the toilets open. We can't prevaricate. That we need to spend now and deal with other financial issues down the road. That seems to be an equivocal vote across party and across the council for the Violent route. So that we today make the recommendation under point 2 to go with CI with a vehement from other reserves, other budget areas under £100,000, which enables Councillor Young, Councillor Rowland, Simon Davey and Andrew to get on with it. And then later in the year, next month, whenever, we can look at where that £100,000 came from, but that won't be as time sensitive. That isn't, hopefully might not be COVID related. It might be a standard run-of-the-mill cost that we can look at when time is on our side. But time is not on our side. Nothing we've done in the last few weeks has been on our side. COVID has rewritten all the rules. So from what other members have said, and I've heard it and I've taken it on board, I think that's the solution. A vehement for the sum proposed of 76,962 for the remaining 9 months until March 2021, which is option CI. And I'd be happy to propose that, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Yes.
Can I suggest a form of wording you might then want to consider for recommendation 2?
Thank you.
So it would be to agree option CI as detailed in the report and delegate authority to the portfolio holder for Coast, Country and Environment to progress the virulent request in accordance with financial regulations, and if not agreed, to recommend to council to approve the additional budget.
Thank you, Henry. That's very clear. So at the moment, if Cabinet were minded to accept that, and we have a proposal from Councillor Hayward on the table, do we, I think we're clear now on 1, 2, 3 and 4. How are we coping with the idea of, I think we're minded to set up a meeting with our MPs by Zoom. And I think Cabinet would like to put that in as a recommendation. Are you happy with the wording on that, Henry?
Sorry, I think you need to know which one it is, but we can, I mean, the wording's relatively straightforward. And it's either write a letter to lobby government for additional spend, to provide funds towards additional spend for toilets, or alternatively, you agree to try and lobby the 3 MPs for a meeting to achieve the same effect.
Okay, thanks, Henry. Councillor Paul Miller.
Thank you. Having listened to Councillor Rowland, I think calling for a meeting would be the best idea when it comes to that. I did have a question as well on the environment from other budgets. Would that include our reserves, or would that be taking money which is being spent elsewhere? Simon, could you answer that question for me? And then I'll be happy to do it.
Okay, if I can, Chairman, it has to be from existing budgets. It can't be from reserves. So what it's doing is saying at the beginning of the year, a council set a budget at X amount. We're not going above that. We're not taking it from reserves. We're just going to take from other sources, stop doing something or make a saving somewhere in order to pay for that. So we're keeping within our cap. So it's not reserves.
All right, thanks very much, Simon. I'm happy to second that, Chair. Councillor Hayward's proposal there.
Okay, thank you. So Henry, it looks as if what I'll say is if Cabinet is minded to suggest that we ask for a meeting by whatever means with our 3 MPs personally rather than writing. If anybody wants that not be the way of doing it, can you just shout up now? Silence. Fantastic. So Henry, I think that's what we're minded to do on that one for recommendation 5.
Yes, that's fine. So it effectively to seek to have a meeting with the 3 MPs with a view to lobbying government for additional money to support the spend on toilets.
Okay. Do you think we're ready to take a vote on this now then?
As far as recommendations go, I'm happy with what you've got. If you're, it's up to you and your cabinet whether you feel like you've debated the issue. I think.
Okay, thank you very much. No more blue hands. So we have a proposer, we have a seconder. So can I ask Sue to record the vote and confirm the outcome, please?
Yep. Councillor Arnott, are you for or against or abstain?
For.
Councillor Wragg.
For.
Councillor Armstrong.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Young. Councillor Young. Okay, I'll come back to Councillor Young. Councillor Ledger.
For.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Haywood.
For.
Councillor Miller.
For.
Councillor Rickson.
For.
And can Councillor Young hear me? Councillor Young.
It's clearly carried.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Sorry, Chair. I was just going to say the majority have voted for.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that, Sue. And thank you very much again for all of the officers from Democratic Services and particularly Andrew Hancock and his team this evening. I'd like again particularly to thank all members from all backgrounds for a very well conducted debate, and we look forward to many more of these. I think it's critical. We have to say this over and over again. We are in this together. Perhaps as we come out of COVID, hopefully by the end of the year, normal political rules may apply. But let's keep on doing this together. So that brings our meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone, including any member of the public watching online, for taking part. However, can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer, Amanda, will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. And until then, your comments will be live to the public. Thank you very much and good night.